everyone. I am back to cover this NFL for Sunday. We have 12 games. Give you guys my final look after doing some more research. Last video that I made for football was just kind of a first look. I was looking at the salaries, looking at the guys and matchups that jump off the page. And then after doing more research, after getting, some of the more reports during the week with practices, knowing what players are probably going to play and if they're still questionable and stuff like that, be back and give you guys my final look. So these are the guys that I have the most interest in on the slate. So let's get started. Before we get into it, I would appreciate if you hit the like button on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And then if you want to join, you can visit the website. Link is in the description. But for football, we'll start with quarterback. At quarterback, you have Lamar Jackson. There's probably no question that Lamar Jackson is going to be the top scoring quarterback, most likely, on Sunday. It's just going to be if the $8,100 price tag is worth it. More often than not, it will be, because this guy has a really good shot to throw for 250-plus yards and run for like 75 to 100 yards. There's been plenty of times last season where he got that bonus, where he got both bonuses, 300 yards passing and 100 yards rushing. So Lamar Jackson is the top quarterback in terms of projection. It's point per dollar wise, he's not at the top of my list, but I still have no problem if you want to pay $8,100 for him. He's definitely my top three quarterbacks. It's going to be Lamar Jackson as one of them. And then I am not that interested in the high 6K range. I'm not interested in really Tom Brady. I'm not interested in 67 for Matt Ryan. Drew Brees looks fine, but usually I like to go a bit cheaper at my quarterback position just because I like to pay up for running backs and receivers. And this week, we have plenty of good options below 6,500. We have Carson Wentz against Washington. The defense is improved a little bit, but Wentz has kind of been able to tear them apart. Like whenever he's faced Washington, he's always had some of his better games. He has Deshaun Jackson back for this one. He also has Jalen Reagor, who's made a miraculous recovery and looks like he will be good to go for Sunday. So that's two big weapons. We know Wentz likes to throw the deep ball, and he's a guy that can get out and run a little bit. He's not going to run as much as he did back in 2017, 2018, but he can still run a little bit. And 63, I think, is just a really good price tag. Then we have Cam Newton making his debut with the Patriots. He's 6,100. Normally, I would like to take a wait-and-see approach with a new quarterback and a new system with a new team with all these new players. But with a guy like Cam Newton, he's a veteran. He's not like a young rookie. So I feel like he'll be able to pick up the playbook and everything real quickly. He is a guy that also can get out and run a bit, get you a rushing touchdown, get you like a handful of rushing yards, every game if he needs to. So 61 against Miami out of all teams. They're so bad defensively. I think he looks really good. And then Phillip Rivers, he's another guy in a new team. He's only 6,000, but he has a pretty good amount of weapons this year. He has a really solid rookie running back who might take some work away from Marlon Mack. He has T.Y. Hilton on the outside. He has a pretty reliable tight end in Jack Doyle. So Phillip Rivers looks like a decent option. And then below 6K, we have like Gardner Minshew against the Colts. I think this game can be a bit high scoring. He still has his weapons in Chark and D.D. Westbrook. And that's pretty much as cheap as I would like to go. You could look at Cousins and Tyrod Taylor for tournaments, but I think they're a little bit riskier. Like, we know the Vikings like to run a lot, and then Tyrod Taylor is just, we don't know what we're really going to expect out from him. But for me, Carson Wentz, I just think that he's going to have a really good game. It will be shocking if he disappoints against Washington. They're favored pretty heavily, or by like 6 points or so. So they should be able to get some touchdowns, and I think Wentz will be a big factor in that. Hopefully he can throw for a couple. Moving on to running backs. Probably some of my favorite running backs this week. McCaffrey is 10K. He's always going to be the guy that you would like to get up to. It's the first week of the season. We'll see how much he clicks with the new quarterback. I mean, it's not going to be like a terrible adjustment for him. Playing with Teddy Bridgewater, who, look at his price tag on Draftkings. He's 59, so decent price tag. But Bridgewater, I think him and McCaffrey will have no problem getting on the same page. You have Cook, not that on at 79. I think the price tag is pretty high on him. I like to go a little bit cheaper, but you could look to him if if you're feeling the Viking stack. But Austin Eckler's, I've been more and more interested in him as the week has kind of gone on. He's 7,000, doesn't have to deal with Melvin Gordon anymore, taking some of his work. He's going to be the 3-down guy. He's going to be on the field getting the carries in the first and second downs. He's going to be on the field in passing down situations. So just with how involved he will be from a running perspective and a receiving perspective, he just gives you a really high floor and a monster ceiling in week 1 against Cincinnati. He's kind of like, I think he's going to have a season like you kind of would expect, like Christian McCaffrey to have if he wouldn't get into the end zone like 3 to 4 times every game. But I feel like Eckler's like Christian McCaffrey-esque will be like 1B to McCaffrey, who's going to be the alpha dog this year for fantasy again. But Eckler, I think, can have a really good game. He should be getting like 15, 20 carries. And then who knows how many targets he'll get, but probably 7 to 10. So week 1 against Cincinnati, get a $3,000 savings from McCaffrey, almost $1,000 savings from Cook. I feel like Eckler can put up a really big fantasy score. And then the second guy that I like a lot is like Joe Mixon, who is 6,700. I think he's just going to also another guy just like Eckler, who is just going to be out there on the field getting all the work on the ground. Also can play a factor in the receiving game. He's going to get the goal line work and all that stuff fresh off a 4-year extension. So new quarterback will be able to score a little bit more. Joe Burrow, they might want to rely on the running game a little bit just to kind of get his feet wet in the first couple games. But he can also throw some dump-off passes to Mixon and watch him go off. So Mixon at 67 I think is also a really reasonable price tag. And then the third guy that I like is like Josh Jacobs at 68. Good matchup for him. Another guy that's in a better offense this year with Ruggs. So I like Josh Jacobs for sure. And then Miles Sanders, there's some question if he will get a full workload or not in week 1. He's dealing with a hamstring. He's been limited. Doug Peterson said that he could, limit some of his work. So for that reason, I still like the price tag a lot for him. But it's a little bit less of a lock as it was early in the week. And then for cheap running backs, I still like Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack at 53. I feel like he's still going to get around 15-20 touches or 15-20 at least looks, whether it be from running or target-wise. But there's a chance that Jonathan Taylor could take some work away from him. So even though the matchup is really good, I think Marlon Mack is a little bit riskier for tournaments. For cash, a little bit better suited for tournaments. And that's kind of it for me. I don't want to go super cheap at running back. The one guy that people are on this week is Gibson from the Redskins. He's 4,000. Normally a $4,000 running back would get a ton of ownership. Some people are scared off because the coach has come out and said they're going to run a committee approach. And McKissick is right now he's been listed as a running back 1, but Gibson will still get some work. It's just that if he's going to be really popular, then I'll just jump off because there's a pretty good chance that, it's going to be split among 3 guys at running back. So moving on to wide receiver this week, probably won't get all the way up to Michael Thomas. Just the price tag is really high at $9K. I like Adams, a similar amount. I like Julio. You could go a little bit cheaper for like Thielen without Diggs this year. So I'm not getting up to Michael Thomas. I still love some of the guys below 6K. I feel like receiver has a pretty good amount of cheap options this week. And my favorite is still T.Y. Hilton at 58. I think you could pair him with the Rivers if you want, but I see T.Y. Hilton just having a really big game. He's only 5,800, which is just a criminally underpriced for a guy with like Hilton who has as much speed. He was dealing with some injuries last year, some inconsistent play at quarterback. But now he has Phillip Rivers, who loves to throw deep, likes to get his receivers involved, and likes to throw a lot. So Hilton at 58 is just tough for me not to have interest in. And then I still like, even though Jalen Reagor is expected to play, it's tough not to have interest in Deshaun Jackson at sub 5K with as much speed and slate breaking upside that he does possess. We know Carson Wentz is probably going to take some deep shots. Jackson and him have hooked up, even last year before he got hurt. He's just too cheap. He's the number one receiver on the team, and number one receivers against Washington or against any team really shouldn't be below 5K. And then the third wide receiver that I have interest in is still Henry Ruggs, who's going to be starting this year with Tyrell Williams out. And then if you wanted to go cheap, you could look at like D.D. Westbrook or maybe Sanu. But really, I want to get the guys that I know will get a lot of volume at wide receiver, at least some of these early weeks. And we know T.Y. Hilton, a number one receiver, Jackson, number one guy. And Henry Ruggs, I think, is going to be the number one receiver, with Tyrell Williams out. He's only 5,100. He's also super cheap. And then moving on to tight end, I'll just touch on some of the guys I like, but these are the 6 players that I have my most interest in for week 1. At tight end, at the top, it's Kittle is my favorite, and then Ertz, my second guy, and then I'll probably go cheap for like Hawkinson at 4,200, or Goddard at 41, or Hayden Hurst, who's now the number one tight end for the Falcons, with Austin Hooper on the Browns now. So Hayden Hurst looks like a pretty reasonable option. Could see if you want to look at Jack Doyle, who's 3,600. Could look his way because Eric Ebron is no longer on the Colts, as I thought. So definitely look at Jack Doyle. We know Phillip Rivers also likes to get his tight ends involved. And then for defense, my favorite is the Patriots defense. I think they should be the most expensive defense on the slate, but they're only 3,200. They look really good. We have the Ravens also look fine. We know they can force some turnovers, and Baker Mayfield does turn the ball over at a pretty high clip, so the Ravens look pretty good to me. And then if I was going cheap, I would look at maybe the Lions against Trubisky, who also turns the ball over a lot. And then defenses, you have $2,000 as your cheapest defense this week. I don't know. Normally defenses you can kind of punt with. Maybe the Jets. Josh Allen also turns the ball over a lot. They're only 2,100. But if you want to be super safe, I think the Patriots are the safest. If you want to take some more risks, you could look at like the Jets at their price tag, or maybe like go up a little bit for the Lions or the Colts. So that's pretty much it for the Draftkings side. I'll touch on Fanduel as well, although a lot of these plays are kind of similar. But just for the Fanduel folks, I'll touch on Fanduel. Okay, Fanduel quarterback, Lamar Jackson is 9,400, so kind of similar price layout as it is on DraftKings. He's $1,000 more expensive than Wilson. Way more expensive than like the second tier, like Wentz and Ryan, and Cam Newton is pretty affordable at 7,300 on FanDuel. And then if you wanted to punt with a quarterback, maybe like Gardner Minshew at 6,700, at least he has some upside. But if you wanted to go safe, on FanDuel it's a little bit easier to pay up just with how the salary is. But for me, I think I still like Carson Wentz a lot at 77. If you wanted to go all the way up for Lamar Jackson, I definitely don't blame you. But 9,400, you are sacrificing some of the other positions. And then at running back, on FanDuel, it's kind of similar to the guys that I like a lot. Eckler is my favorite at 77. Mixon I like quite a bit. Jacobs is expensive, but I still like him. And then don't know how many snaps Fournette will get in his first game with the Bucs. He also got there very late. Sanders also could be limited, so we don't really know with him. Le'Veon Bell just hasn't looked really good, but as we saw with David Johnson yesterday, maybe just a new season, maybe he's healthier. Definitely think you could play him at 65. And then that's kind of it. You don't have to go super cheap at running back because wide receiver has plenty of value. So for me, I'm still going with Eckler and Mixon just because I know what I'll kind of get out of those guys. 2-3 down guys that will get 80-90% of the snaps. And then at wide receiver, Michael Thomas is only $600 more expensive than Julio, so it's easier to get to Thomas if you wanted to on FanDuel. Also think Devontae Adams looks pretty fine at 8K. And then we'll see Kenny Golladay if he is out. If he's out, then definitely will get a bump for like Marvin Jones. So that will definitely be something to keep an eye on as Sunday approaches. Keenan Allen no longer has the benefit of having Phillip Rivers throw him the ball. Tyrod Taylor is definitely less of a deep throwing quarterback, but he's only 7K. You could look his way. But for me, I still like T.Y. Hilton. He's only 6,400 on Fanduel. I just think that price tag is too cheap. The Jags defense has just lost so many good guys over the last couple years that Hilton should have no problem getting open and getting some looks from Phillip Rivers. And then Deshaun Jackson is also really nicely priced on FanDuel, who's 5,700. So Hilton and Jackson give you two deep options that hopefully we'll get at least a couple of shots this week. Both are in pretty fine matchups, especially Deshaun Jackson. Like, he is $800 cheaper than Terry McLaurin. I like Jackson way more. Like, 57 for Jackson I think is just crazy. And then my third receiver, like Henry Ruggs, is insanely cheap on FanDuel. 51 is the same price tag he is on DraftKings, but FanDuel you want to pay up. It's easier to pay up for more with the salary cap. So Ruggs is just too cheap. So these are the guys that I like a lot. On FanDuel you might even be able to get up to like Lamar Jackson at quarterback because there's so many cheap guys at receiver. But this is like the guys that I like the most this week. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And good luck on Sunday.